Now let's pause for a moment to savor this picture, if you will. We're looking at Prescott, teamed up with a man who would become one of the most notorious law-breaking CIA chiefs in history. Under Reagan, Casey was at the epicenter of the October surprise/Iran-Contra/crack cocaine scandal. And a year before the assassination, these two formed this National Strategy Information Center to organize opposition to Kennedy's efforts to reduce the power of the CIA. To organize opposition. Think for a moment, what does that mean, to organize opposition? It means that you meet with all the most powerful people you can find, other people who, like you, want to stop Kennedy, and you try to come up with plans to stop him. That's what organizing opposition means, isn't it? The killers would be the most natural candidates for membership in Prescott's organization. Now, this is only circumstantial evidence, but it is powerful circumstantial evidence. And if we pause for another moment to catch up on our scorekeeping, we will see that it has already been shown that he did in fact surround himself with people, including his son, who were directly connected to the killers. He was closely connected to Harriman, who was closely connected to Hunt, a second-degree connection. He was closely connected to Nixon, who was closely connected to Hunt, another close second-degree connection. Hunt was in the CIA. That means he also worked for Dulles. So add one more second-degree connection with Hunt. And Hunt was supervised by Richard Bissell at the Bay of Pigs, so also add a third-degree connection with Hunt. And of course, we have the Hoover memo, which says in black and white in so many words that there is a direct first-degree connection between George Bush and the misguided anti-Castro Cubans who were famously supervised directly by E. Howard Hunt. But at the center of Bush's connections to the world of secret murder and filth is his membership in the secret society of Skull and Bones, a secret Yale fraternity famous for its celebration of racism, robbery, and death. This tomb is where they meet twice a week to engage in black rituals involving skulls, candles, and ceremonial group masturbation. I guess it's supposed to be a kind of gay group marriage thing. Brothers under the skin is how the Bonesmen themselves describe their relationship. Their graduates are a powerful bunch of devils. Averell Harriman and Prescott Bush were Bonesmen. George Herbert Walker Bush was a Bonesman, and so was his uncle, the arch-racist George Herbert Walker. Robert Lovett, architect of the CIA, was a Bonesman, selected for membership by Prescott himself. F. Truby Davison was also selected for membership in 1918, the year that Prescott did the picking. Davison was in charge of hiring for the CIA in 1948, the year George Herbert Walker Bush left Yale in search of a job. Davison had a son, Endicott Peabody Davison. Endicott was Skull and Bones, class of '48, making him brother under the skin to George Herbert Walker Bush. He's also the Bush family lawyer. Okay, they're weird and creepy. Or not. Maybe in 1,000 years this group masturbation thing will be a mainstream practice in group therapy. I don't know. Maybe they don't do it anymore. Maybe they never did it. I don't really care. It's not the point. The point is that no one will dispute the fact that Skull and Bones is an intimate organization whose members have very close relationships with each other, who work with each other throughout the rest of their lives, and who are very loyal to each other. Prescott chose Truby. He had a close relationship with him. Truby went on to become the head of hiring for CIA. George Sr. was a brother under the skin to Truby's son. George Sr. had a close, even intimate relationship with the son of the head of hiring for CIA. Their fathers had a close, even intimate relationship. What we are supposed to be doing here is trying to evaluate this message from Hoover. We're trying to judge the likelihood that this memo, referring to a CIA supervisor of anti-Castro Cubans named George Bush, is referring to our George Bush. Certainly all this evidence about Skull and Bones and the CIA makes it certainly appear very possible, even likely. In a world where personal connection is everything, no one could possibly have a closer personal relationship to the head of hiring for CIA than George Herbert Walker Bush. Bush's first job on leaving Skull and Bones was to work for Neil Mallon, brother under the skin to Prescott, class of 1918. In a letter to White House aide C.D. Jackson, dated March 26, 1953, now Senator Prescott Bush, described Neil Mallon as a very old and dear friend. I might say that Neil Mallon is well known to Allen Dulles and has tried to be helpful to him at the CIA, especially in the procurement of individuals to serve in that important agency. So, George went from skull and bones. He went from being a brother under the skin to the son of the head of hiring for CIA, to working for a recruiter for CIA. You couldn't ask for more powerful evidence that our George Bush was in the CIA when Hoover said that he was. But you can get it. This letter records a meeting between Prescott Bush, George's CIA-promoting father, Neil Mallon, the CIA recruiter, and Allen Dulles, the director of CIA, to discuss, quote, our pilot project in the Caribbean, unquote. Now let that sink in for a moment. Here you have the two most important men in George's future professional life, his father, Prescott, and the man who trained George in the oil business, Neil Mallon, meeting with the head of CIA in order to coordinate with the CIA their future plans in the Caribbean. Prescott and Neil Mallon's future plans had George at their center. George was their pilot project in the Caribbean. The Bay of Pigs was the CIA's pilot project in the Caribbean. This letter, then, not only ties George to the CIA, corroborating the Hoover memo on that point, it not only ties George's future oil company to the CIA's plans in the Caribbean, but it thereby ties George to the CIA's misguided anti-Castro groups mentioned in the Hoover memo, which was the CIA's pilot project in the Caribbean. And a short time later, at the moment that Allen Dulles began implementing his plan for the CIA invasion of Cuba at the Bay of Pigs, Bush began his independent business career as the sole owner of Zapata Offshore Oil. Zapata Offshore's oil rigs just happened to be positioned right in the middle of CIA operations in the area 30 miles north of Cuba near Cay Sal, an island used by the CIA for supplying the various terrorist raids of Operation 40, Operation Mongoose, Alpha 66, and the rest of these murders against Cuba. Let me repeat that. Bush left his job, being trained in the oil business by a CIA recruiter, and went to work on his own, setting up shop right in the middle of the CIA's misguided anti-Castro Cuban operations. Really, that should sort of settle the question. 3 pieces of indisputable, solid evidence that our George Bush was working for the CIA in the Caribbean. And this is the big stuff. But there's more. The assassins of Operation 40, the misguided anti-Castro Cubans of the Hoover memo, were supervised on the front lines by E. Howard Hunt. Hunt got this job because he was previously a first-level supervisor of the Bay of Pigs invasion. The secret code name for the Bay of Pigs invasion was Operation Zapata.